It was a cold, quiet night in rural Texas when everything changed for the Caffey family. In the pre-dawn darkness of the 1st of March, 2008, Terry Caffey lay bleeding on the ground, his world literally up in flames behind him. His home, a modest house on a lonely country road near Alba, was engulfed in fire. Terry had been shot multiple times, and every movement was agony, but somehow he found the strength to crawl away from the blaze. With each painful inch forward, his mind swirled in horror and disbelief. His wife and children were inside that burning house. He feared he was the only one left alive who could tell the world what had happened there. Just minutes earlier, the Caffey family had been asleep in their beds, unaware of the evil approaching. Around 3 a.m., Terry and his wife Penny woke to the sound of their bedroom door crashing open. Before they could react, gunshots rang out. Penny screamed in confusion and terror, but her cries were cut short as she was hit by the first bullets. In the dim light, Terry saw a figure looming over the bed and a flash of metal. Unbelievably, the intruder had a sword raised high. The attacker brought it down on Penny even as she lay wounded, inflicting horrifying blows. Terry shouted and tried to reach for his wife or perhaps a weapon, but in an instant he was shot as well. A searing pain tore through his body as one bullet after another found him. He collapsed to the floor, his blood soaking into the carpet as chaos erupted in the house. Down the hall, the Caffey's two young sons, 13-year-old Matthew and 8-year-old Tyler, awoke to the sounds of violence. Terrified, Matthew ran toward his parents' room to help, only to be confronted by a figure with a gun. Terry, fading in and out on the bedroom floor, heard his son suddenly cry out in desperate pleading, "Charlie, why are you doing this? Please no." The boy recognized one of the attackers. It was Charlie Wilkinson, Erin's boyfriend. Matthew's pleas were answered with a gunshot. In the boy's bedroom, little Tyler was hiding, paralyzed with fear. The second intruder, armed with the samurai sword, found him. He stabbed the child again and again, snuffing out the last innocent life in that house. In a matter of minutes, the Caffey family had been torn apart. Penny was dead or dying from gunshots and vicious stab wounds. Matthew had been shot at point-blank range. Tyler had been brutally stabbed. Terry himself was barely clinging to life, riddled with 5 bullet wounds and unable to move, forced to endure the nightmare of hearing his family murdered around him. Smoke began to fill the home. Coughing and in pain, Terry realized the attackers had set the house on fire before fleeing. They intended to leave no survivors and no evidence. Through sheer willpower, Terry knew he had to get out if he had any chance to survive. He also felt a fierce responsibility in his heart. He had recognized Charlie's name and voice from Matthew's scream. If he lived, he could identify at least one of the attackers. Summoning strength from deep within, Terry started to crawl. He managed to drag himself to a bathroom window and tumble out into the cold night air, escaping the burning house. Outside, lying on the ground under a black sky, Terry saw his home becoming an inferno. The heat scorched his face and the smoke burned his lungs, but he was out. Far from any city, in the dark countryside, there was no one immediately around to help. Bleeding and badly injured, Terry forced himself onward. The nearest neighbors were about 400 yards away, a long distance for a man who could barely crawl. Still, he refused to give up. He was driven by the slim hope that someone in his family might still be saved, and by the need to tell authorities who was responsible. Over more than an hour, inch by inch, he pulled himself through the woods and rough field toward his neighbor's house. Several times, he nearly lost consciousness, but each time he thought of his loved ones, especially his 16-year-old daughter Erin, whom he had not seen among the dead. Where was Erin? Was she somehow still alive? The uncertainty gave him the strength to continue. At long last, as dawn neared, Terry reached his neighbor's home and managed to make enough noise to get their attention. The neighbors were shocked to find Terry collapsed on their porch, covered in blood and soot, barely able to speak. They immediately called 911. With what little breath he had left, Terry gasped out that his family had been attacked and his house set on fire. He also uttered a name, Charlie. It was all he could say, but it was enough. Paramedics soon arrived, and Terry, barely clinging to life, was rushed to the hospital. Firefighters raced to the Caffey home, But by the time they extinguished the flames, nothing was left but charred ruins. Inside, they found the remains of Penny and the two little boys. One person was conspicuously missing from the wreckage. Erin Caffey's body was nowhere to be found. When Terry emerged from emergency surgery, he learned the heartbreaking news that Penny, Matthew, and Tyler were gone. He also anxiously asked about Erin, but no one knew where she was. Terry told the police everything he remembered. In a trembling voice, he recounted how he had heard Matthew scream Charlie Wilkinson's name during the attack. He had seen enough in the chaos to know that his daughter's boyfriend was one of the assailants. Immediately, the county sheriff's office and Texas Rangers launched a manhunt for Charlie and anyone else who might have been involved. An alert was put out with Charlie Wilkinson's name and description. It did not take long for law enforcement to get a lead. Acting on information from friends and family, officers located a mobile home belonging to 20-year-old Charles Wade, one of Charlie's friends, deep in the woods outside town. On that very same day, just hours after the murders, a team of officers surrounded the trailer. Inside the mobile home, officers found exactly who they were looking for. 18-year-old Charlie Wilkinson was there. So was his friend, Charles Chuck Wade. Huddled with them was Wade's girlfriend, 18-year-old Bobby Johnson. And to the astonishment of the police, there was Erin Caffey, alive and apparently unharmed. The four young people were caught completely off guard. They were taken into custody without resistance and separated for questioning. At first, deputies weren't sure if Erin was a victim who had been abducted, or if she was part of this plot. That uncertainty didn't last long. As soon as the interviews began, the horrific truth came spilling out. Faced with the reality that Terry had survived and identified them, Charlie and his accomplices confessed in turn. All three of Erin's companions pointed to her as the mastermind. Charlie broke down and admitted that, yes, he had shot the Caffeys, but he insisted he did it because Erin wanted her family gone. Wade confirmed that the entire plan was Erin's idea, saying he had gone along with it to help his friend Charlie, and that Erin had even promised them some money. Bobby, the getaway driver, told investigators how she and Erin had waited down the road in the car, while Charlie and Wade went inside to commit the murders. According to Bobby, Erin was coldly resolute that night. When the boys returned to the car spattered with blood, Erin's first question was whether the deed was done. In the interrogation room, confronted by these accounts, Erin initially cried and denied it all. But soon the evidence was overwhelming. The police had recovered the gun and the sword used in the murders, and they had phone records showing Erin's communication with the others that night. Realizing the game was up, Erin finally admitted that she had been involved from the start. The community was stunned as the news broke. A 16-year-old girl had plotted to massacre her own family over a teenage romance. People who knew the Caffeys could not reconcile this with the girl they remembered. The Caffeys had been a church-going, tight-knit family. Terry was a nurse and a lay preacher at their small church. Penny played piano there, and Erin sang in the choir. They homeschooled their kids and raised them with love and faith. Neighbors recalled Erin as a quiet, polite girl. No one saw this coming. Yet, as investigators dug deeper, the story of how this tragedy came to be began to surface. Months before the murders, Erin Caffey had fallen head over heels for Charlie Wilkinson. They met in 2007 while Erin worked at a Sonic drive-in. The relationship blossomed quickly, and Erin believed she was in love. Charlie even gave Erin a promise ring, a family heirloom from his grandmother, symbolizing his intention to marry her one day. When Penny noticed that ring on Erin's finger, alarm bells rang. Erin's parents thought things were moving too fast. Their unease only grew when they looked up Charlie's MySpace page online and found it filled with profanity and sexual content. To Terry and Penny, devout Christians raising their children with strict values, Charlie was not the kind of boy they wanted for their daughter. They confronted Erin and told her she needed to break up with him. They even made her return the ring. Erin was furious. In her eyes, her parents were ruining her life and taking away the boy she loved. Friends later reported that Erin spoke often of her anger. On one occasion, she told a former boyfriend in a chilling half-joke that she wished her family could be killed, so she wouldn't have to deal with them. No one imagined she meant it literally at the time. But in February 2008, Erin and Charlie started to turn that dark fantasy into a real plan. If her family was the obstacle to their being together, then they decided the family had to go. Charlie recruited his buddy Charles Wade to help, and Wade brought his girlfriend Bobby into the plot. Over the course of a few weeks, the group discussed and prepared. Erin knew the layout of her house and her family's routines. They chose the late-night hours when everyone would be asleep. Erin was to leave a door unlocked for them. Charlie obtained a .22 caliber pistol, and Wade had a Japanese-style samurai sword that he decided to use as well. On the night of the 29th of February, 2008, Erin quietly slipped out of her home after everyone went to bed. She met up with Charlie, Wade, and Bobby down the road. As planned, she left the door to the house unlocked. While Erin waited in Bobby's idling car a short distance away, Charlie and Wade, clad in black and armed with their weapons, entered the Caffey home. The horror that unfolded next would shock the nation. By sunrise on the 1st of March 2008, the devastating outcome of that plot was clear. 3 members of the Caffey family were dead. The family home was burned to ashes, and only Terry and Erin survived, one as a victim, the other as a perpetrator. The legal consequences began to unfold immediately. Erin Caffey, Charlie Wilkinson, Charles Wade, and Bobby Johnson were all charged with capital murder for the deaths of Penny, Matthew, and Tyler. In Texas, capital murder can carry the death penalty. Because Erin was a minor, prosecutors made it known they would not seek death in her case, but they initially considered it for the 2 adult men. As the case gained media attention, many were in disbelief that a daughter could do this, and there was a strong desire to see justice served swiftly. While awaiting trial, Erin sat in jail coming to terms with what she had done. Terry, recovering from his injuries and grieving his immense loss, faced an agonizing emotional battle. At first he was overwhelmed by anger and heartbreak. He later confessed that he even contemplated suicide, feeling he had lost everything. But Terry's faith was deeply rooted, and he eventually found a sense of purpose through it. In an almost unbelievable act of grace, he chose to forgive his daughter. He realized that holding on to hatred would destroy him completely. Terry began to visit Erin in jail before her trial, telling her that he still loved her despite everything. Erin, for her part, broke down in tears and apologized to her father. She had traded her family for a boy, and now that boy was gone from her life and she was left to face the reality of her actions. In the end, none of the 4 defendants went to trial. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and on the advice of their attorneys, each accepted a plea deal to avoid the possibility of harsher sentences. In January 2009, Erin Caffey pleaded guilty to her role in the murders. She was sentenced to 2 life terms plus an additional 25 years, with the possibility of parole after 40 years or so. Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade also pleaded guilty to capital murder. Both of them received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Johnson, the least directly involved, pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 20 years. Notably, at Terry Caffey's request, prosecutors did not pursue the death penalty against Charlie or Wade. Terry publicly stated that executing them would not bring back his family, and that he hoped they would use their time in prison to reflect on the horrible things they had done. At the sentencing hearings, the courtroom listened to statements that were as heartbreaking as they were unusual. Terry spoke not to condemn his daughter, but to forgive her. He addressed the court and the offenders, saying that he forgave them and prayed they would seek forgiveness from God. Many people in attendance were moved to tears. It's not often that a victim's family member shows such compassion to the ones who caused their suffering. But for Terry, this was a step he needed to take to survive emotionally. His act of forgiveness didn't mean he wasn't devastated or that he thought they should go unpunished. It meant he refused to let hatred poison what remained of his life. In the years since, Terry Caffey has rebuilt his life as best as one can after such a tragedy. He eventually remarried and even had more children, trying to find a measure of happiness again while never forgetting the family he lost. He wrote a memoir titled Terror by Night, detailing the night of the murders and his journey toward forgiveness. He has made it his mission to share his story, speaking at churches, schools, and community events about the dangers of unchecked anger and violence, and about the power of forgiveness. Astonishingly, he continues to visit Erin, who remains imprisoned. He has said that he maintains a relationship with her, and that he does not believe she was the sole mastermind of the crime. He feels Charlie influenced her significantly. Whether or not that is true, it is clear that Terry's love for his daughter endures despite everything. From behind bars, Erin has also expressed deep remorse. In interviews years later, she acknowledged that she made horrible, irreversible mistakes. She admitted that her parents had not been abusive or cruel. In fact, they were loving, and that her reasons for orchestrating the murders were selfish and senseless. This offers little solace given the enormity of the crime, but it shows that with time, Erin came to grasp the magnitude of what she did. The tale of Erin Caffey and the destruction of the Caffey family is one of the most heartbreaking true crime stories in recent memory. It serves as a grim reminder of how a combination of teenage rebellion, obsession, and anger can spiral into devastating violence. It's almost unbelievable that a young girl from a loving home could plot to kill her own mother and little brothers over a romantic relationship. Yet it happened, proving that darkness can take root even where there should have been nothing but love and safety. At the same time, this story is also a testament to an extraordinary act of forgiveness. In the aftermath of unspeakable loss, Terry Caffey chose mercy over vengeance. His ability to forgive Erin and the others who destroyed his family is something that few could imagine doing. Through this forgiveness, he found the strength to go on living. While the tragedy can never be undone and the pain will always linger, Terry's journey shows that even in the darkest times, a glimmer of light can persist. The Caffey family story, a tale of love turned to hate, of betrayal and loss, and of forgiveness and resilience, continues to captivate and haunt anyone who hears it. It is a sobering tale that we can all learn from, and one that ensures the victims are never forgotten.